Welcome to New Zealand's Deep South. This is one of the most scenic and mountainous regions of the South Island, and for the past 56 years, a small army of elite cycling teams have descended on Invercargill to compete in one of the biggest and toughest events on the New Zealand cycle racing calendar. Over the course of 7 exciting stages, the assembled teams will face everything the roads, terrain and weather of the region can throw at them. At the end of the week, the best cyclists will take home the titles and the jerseys money can't buy. This is the 2013 SBS Bank Tour of Southland. Yesterday, the riders broke the back of the 2013 SBS Bank Tour of Southland. At 187 kilometres, Te Anau to Coronet Peak is the queen stage of this year's tour, and it had the potential to be the deciding one. Creation Signs L&M Group Racing's Grayson Napier featured in the early action with the aim of holding on to that polka dot jersey, and he got into the day's break after about 30 minutes. Also in the breakaway was Tom Scully in the green Sprint Ace jersey. Both Napier and Scully secured some vital wins in their relevant classifications and were happy to sit back as Coronet Peak approached. Kiwi Velo Armstrong Prestige riders did a great job positioning yellow jersey holder James Oram at the bottom of the Coronet Peak road, but the 8-kilometre climb was never going to be a straightforward proposition. With temperatures hovering around 25 degrees, Oram found himself in the mix with a bunch of strong riders from other teams, but it was the Huon Salmon Genesis Wealth Advisors team and their rider Taylor Gunman who came through in the last 500 metres, riding down Sam Lindsay to take the stage win. James Oram crossed in third to extend his lead in the overall classification and take another step closer to the week's ultimate prize.
I think it was good, driving the pace. It sort of put a lot of guys out of contention, so that's definitely good. I mean, second on GC is a good place to be at the moment. I mean, doesn't mean we have to ride the front today, so we'll just be sitting in there and saving our legs for tomorrow, I think.
The place is wonderful and it's a bit like at home because the weather is the same, and yeah, but this year there is no wind, but it's looked like in Switzerland and with the mountain yesterday, so yeah, it's nice to be here.
We have a good spirit in the team and we work well together, so we always stick together in the race, and we mark our presence as a team, and I think that's also important if you want to be up in the Team GC.
Stage 5 sees the SBS Bank Tour of Southland return to Invercargill and rural northern Southland. After 2 huge stages, the rolling farmland of Stage 5 will come as some relief. With a proud history of coal mining, this is now the farming heartland of the region and a major destination for trout fishermen.
This is probably one of the flatter stages of the tour, really, and there are some nice wee pinches to keep those hill climbers interested, but really pretty flat for the most part.
If you're not a climber and you've missed out on the Black Mount to Te Anau Coronet Peak climbs, this stage would be one you're trying to maximise, gain back some time.
There'll still be teams looking to isolate the yellow jersey and attack when possible, so it could still be a really exciting stage.
So a peloton here of some 83-odd riders of the original 90 making their way out Great North Road here on the second to last day of this tour.
Yes, you can see some more rain jackets being donned, a bit more arm warmers, a bit more wet weather gear. Certainly the conditions are in complete contrast to anything we've had. Once again, helmet cam supplied by Carl Murray, Calder Stewart. Fantastic way to see a bike race.
So the flag drop at Bainfield Road as they make their way up towards the first sprint of the day here at Sacred Heart School, and once again the school kids are out in great support of these riders here, and traditionally the crosswinds along this stretch of the road here to try and split them into groups, but fairly good conditions bar that rain here at the moment.
You can see a lot of the riders are all still grouped up. There's still a wee bit of enthusiasm in the bunch though, and often the starts can be a wee bit more subdued after a stage like the Coronet Peak stage, but here we are, another attack coming just out from the White House, and there's still a lot of energy left in some of these riders, Julian.
Yeah, certainly you're right though, with 187 kilometres yesterday, and of course the big day the day before into Te Anau can't be underestimated as well. For some of these boys here, they'll be quite pleased just to hide away in the bunch, and the change in conditions as well, going from 25 degrees yesterday up the big climb back down to around 14 here today is going to make a bit of a difference to the legs.
You can see on the outskirts we're only 18 k's into the race, but there's some climbs further along, and you can see here at the front of the race there's some splits starting to emerge. No, sorry, we're at the front of the peloton here. Just coming into the Waimatuku area. There's a right-hander coming up, some railway lines, but once again none of these brakes have yet managed to stick.
It's the H&J's Outdoor World Avanti Plus colours on the front once again. They're starting to keep the pace very high here, trying to get themselves off the front to be in that group that gets away is what these guys are trying to do, and that's why we see the likes of Gordon McCauley in the mix here as they make their way towards that turn.
Some of them make their way towards that turn. A couple of the riders have just overshot the mark there. One of the Radio Sports squad looks like he's missed the corner, and one of his other mates coming around. He'll rejoin the peloton. But the conditions this morning, and of course with the stage yesterday, as we've talked about, there'll be some seriously tired riders in this group.
So the peloton settling down a little bit here, but still a bit stretched out as we see now a group trying to get themselves off the front, and just behind them there you can see that peloton. So it's only sitting around 8 or 9 seconds, but it's the figure there with the red helmet of Calder Stewart's and Michael Torkler leading the group.
And here we are at the front of this group again. You can see there the rider number 83. That's Luke McPherson, one of the local lads. This H&J squad this year have certainly tried to involve themselves in as much as they can. Luke McPherson's a local lad. He's only been riding for 3 or 4 years. He'll have learnt a lot about stage racing this week.
And he's surrounded by a fair bit of experience there as well, with Hagen in the red colours for the Ascot Park Kia Motors team. But it's going to be one of the Barry Stewart boys who are going to go off the front here. That's Page, just giving it a bit of a rev up as they make their way towards one of the first climbs here of the day, the King of the Mountains points. But they're still trying to get themselves off to a decent sort of a gap as we see one of the Genesis boys trying to get themselves onto that lead group.
Yes, there's certainly some gaps starting to appear in this front breakaway group. Of course, the preems do tend to disrupt the flow of a breakaway, and there are so many of the preems on the SBS Bank Tour of Southland. You can see there Luke McPherson still hanging in there, the Kia Motors rider. They're coming into a Tautau. There's some quite nasty railway lines in a Tautau. These guys in these wet conditions are going to have to be very, very careful with their bike handling. Some of the new teams this year, we can see the Space team there. Also, one of the newer teams, McCallum's group.
Team McCallum is a dry cleaning company on D Street in Invercargill.
Hanging the rest out to dry.
I guess I've been nominated as the team leader for the team because of the experience that I've got riding and racing around the Southland region. I was a policeman in Winton, so I'm very familiar with just about every corner and every rise.
The experience so far has been really good. It's easier just because you race with different people, like with club races and stuff like that, so you can always just mingle and just be flexible.
My usual sort of bread and butter when it comes to racing is multisport. Recently I've decided that I want to take on the Tour of Southland. I've been told that I'm absolutely mad. From what I've heard from riders, it could be an absolute diabolical week, but I'm bearing that in mind, and I'm going to try and ride sensibly.
Yeah, the first thing that hit me was just how little space there was. It's like being in the middle of a big school of fish. I got dropped off a couple of times, but managed to dig it in and just hang in there.
Our team roles probably will be established out on the road, who's feeling better by the end of the stage or who can go for the hilltop finish and stuff like that.
I'm having an absolute ball. I'll admit though that my bum is getting quite sore. It's not used to this sort of punishment. Team's feeling good, strong, we've still got a good position. We've got a man in 10th place on general classification who we're still going to be looking after, and spirits are high.
Here we see the stage profile at 44 kilometres into it as they approach the township of Tautau. 44 kilometres into it, the railway line here for the main peloton, with a group leading it by 45 seconds.
Yeah, they're very, very dangerous. And there we can see a rider's just come down and another one's just crashed. It looks like one of the Barry Stewart riders has hurt himself. But these railway lines are crisscrossed all over this course today, and they're going to be very slippery in these wet conditions.
There's certainly a bit of a technique to deal with those there, as the medical team now will be called forward to look after those riders. They'll be back into the race very shortly indeed, as we make our way towards this lead group now, starting to settle down, and a bit of conversation going on here. And often can happen amongst the riders here as they try to establish what needs to happen and how they're going to help each other out. Is Hambrook there on the fronts, the man in the red colours. He's joined by the man from LMM Racing as well, and as they make their way towards another one of the climbs just out of a Tautau.
Yeah, this is the Scots Gap climb. Quite a tough wee climb, actually. It starts very, very steeply and carries on. But these sort of climbs are just not what this breakaway just needs at the moment while they're establishing things. Here you can see here the Roman Van Uden from the Powernet team. This boy's been on the attack so much in this year's SBS Tour. But of course, coming up behind him to take those hill points is the young man, Kieran Hambrook from Nelson, the Ascot Park Kia Motors rider. He's going to sneak away and take some of these prem points that are on the road.
Of course, Hambrook is the man that was involved in last year's tour. He's joined by his brother this year, one of 3 sets of brothers that are involved in teams this year in the tour.
You can see here back to the back of the chasing peloton coming around this corner. It's quite a nasty left-hander actually, and with the tar seal having been so hot and the wet on it, it is very treacherous. These riders are approaching these corners very, very cautiously, which is good. You only need to fall off once. You can see here once again the gap to the front group, 1 minute 18. So there's still a wee bit of work to do from this front group with us back at the peloton.
We saw the Kiwi Velo rider on the front there as the Southland farming community join in the operations of the tour and supporting these riders as they go past. But the man on the front here, once again, it's Kiwi Velo here as they start to pound away and just keep a good tempo, not allowing that group to get away by much. Of course, Torkler, and that is the potential man who could get himself into yellow if they allow it to open up too much.
Yeah, they'll be keeping a close eye on time checks and making sure things don't go out too far. Lovely shot there of the limestone hills we experience out in the Clifton area around Southland. But this group is just cogging along. There's a lot of riders there who will be really relishing this even tempo within the peloton, especially after the previous day's racing.
So we can see a bit of a split here as we make our way back forward to this break group here. So there's been a bit of cat and mouse going on. They've just had another one of the hill climbs here, and 3 of the riders, including Hambrook, Van Uden in there, Page I think is possibly the other guy that's in the mix. No, that's Tom Ashley, the one in the black colours from the Creation Signs LMM Racing. So it looks like we've decided we're just going to have a bit of a chat about it there, and they've peeled right off that lead group.
Yeah, there's obviously a wee bit of a disagreement about who's coming through and who's not coming through, and this kind of thing is certainly not going to help these guys' chances of a breakaway staying away in a stage race like this. This is not the kind of thing that is conducive to keeping away from the peloton.
It's not reflecting any sort of united front amongst these guys here. As we see Hambrook here in the red colours for the Ascot team, he does another surge to try and get himself across the gap. So if they're trying to peel each other off, they're not doing a great job of it here, because I think potentially here, looking at the gap in the distance, these whole 3 boys here might have missed the break.
Yeah, I think there might be some hands going into pockets reaching in for some food, and they may be heading back to the bunch. But once again, here we are back at the front of the breakaway. Luke McPherson's still hanging in there, obviously looking after himself there at the back, but he's having a stunning ride on this stage. He'd probably be thinking about later on trying not to do too much, use his energy up wisely, but this is a great day out for Luke McPherson from the H&J's team.
Josh Page there for the Barry Stewart Builders team, just taking off his racing cape there in these cooler conditions and the wet conditions. He'll be throwing that into his back pocket or calling for the team van to come forward there and offload that as they try to settle down into things. But it's Michael Torkler, of course, the winner of the Tour of Borneo and the Tour of Wellington in 2010, who's been set the task of leading them out as we go back to the familiar colours once again of the Kiwi Velo team. Of course, they're defending it here with the man in yellow.
Yes, they've put in a sterling effort. This is one of the aspects of cycling which does go unheralded, really. These guys work at the front just so much for the team leader. You can see here we're in the Oho Nightcaps area, and these Kiwi Velo guys have just been so good in trying to contain things for their team leader and the yellow jersey wearer.
So you see the hand going up with the bottle as a few of the riders take the opportunity here to call up their team vehicles or the neutral wagons here and receive a bit of food, a bit of drink, as we make our way now across to 96 kilometres of this 160 kilometre stage. Com number 2, Graham Sycamore in the vehicle here. He follows the break all day long and keeps a close eye on things to make sure these boys follow the rules on the roads of Southland.
Yeah, we're starting to get a lot closer towards Mossburn now. Once you get out of Ojai, there's a bit of a climb, and then you start going over a few false flats. You actually climb all the way up to Mossburn. You're actually following the Aridi River out, which is flowing, of course. So there's a bit of a false flat. It's not the easiest ride to go to Mossburn, especially in these conditions.
Yeah, that's a good point. As we saw the profile there, it's quite deceiving for these riders. Gordon McCauley, of course, relishing being on the front, the man that's in the Southland Times most combative jersey. The new jersey to this year's tour, and of course he secured that yesterday after a big battle up the hill. He's always keen to be on the front and give a bit of an effort off it there, and he's got the young man Fraser Goff, who's done a huge amount of work over the week here for his Kiwi Velo team.
You can see there a wee box underneath the back seat of Fraser's bike. That is a download software box which they use to download their power outputs from the crank. They take the chain torque off that and download them in each stage. So there's a lot of technology that goes on these bikes which they use afterwards, a lot of computers and bits and pieces as well.
There's another split happening yet again in this front group. So this is quite different racing indeed, with the front group are attacking each other a wee bit here. And we see in the distance there the man Josh Page from Barry Stewart Builders, who's decided to head off with about 30 kilometres to go. Now the man trying to get across to him is in the defending leaders team. That's Daniel Barry of Kiwi Velo, who looks like he's going to make it onto the wheel and opening up a bit of a gap now, about 20 odd seconds of McPherson and co. And it looks like they could be starting to be ridden off the wheel a bit.
Yeah, this is a big effort here, and Daniel Barry's doing everything he can to make sure that he contains things. Obviously, his orders will be to be in the front group. You can see here he's starting to get instruction from the supporting wagon. There's a bit of a bottle change going on here, which is being used as an effort and an opportunity to give him some advice. And Daniel Barry will be under some pretty strict instructions as to what they want him to do.
Yeah, unlike previous years here, and a lot of the international races these days, the riders don't have the earpieces, so they have the instructions called to them from the side of the road, or as we see here with their team management, will be called upon to come forward, give them something to eat, something to drink, but at the same time pass on those crucial messages there of what needs to be done. So he'll be told what's happening back in this bunch, and then what we can see is that these riders now are getting a bit unsettled. They want to get the stage win here. They know the opportunity to do so is running out.
Yeah, things are starting to heat up a bit. You can see a lot of these riders realise this is probably one of the last stages they've got in order to try and win in a bunch finish or something along those sort of lines. The opportunities are running out for them, and there's a wee bit of frustration coming into the peloton now. Some of these guys are really starting to ramp up their efforts and trying to get away, and we probably will see a bit more of an organised chase coming up shortly.
Mossburn is fast approaching, and of course then we enter into about 25 kilometres to go, and it's a very quick descent all the way through to the finish here, so the speed is certainly ramping up here, and you can see that there by the way in which they're stringing themselves out into single file. You see the sprint haste there, about 20 back in the profile here as we approach 135 kilometres of a 160 stage.
Here's the township of Mossburn, which we're coming through. There's some sprint primes up for grabs here from this front two. They may or may not worry about those, but you can see once again, back at the main peloton, things are starting to get organised. The Genesis team, the Calder Stewart team, they're all starting to represent themselves. They realise there's an opportunity here if they can bring things back. They've all got sprinters within the squads, and they are all hoping to bring it back to give them an opportunity to win this final stage here into Lumsden.
It's been a day in which the break has only settled around about the 2-minute mark, which we would suggest wouldn't be enough to take out a stage of this distance here, and hence now we see these riders, they've decided it's time to ramp things up here. They've been sent forward by their team leaders, by their sprinters in their team, and are stirring things along here, so everyone wants to get into the mix. We see big Jason Allen there in the red helmet. He's a veteran of this tour. He's taken stages out before, a Commonwealth Games representative. Tom Scully, the Harcourt sprint ace, he's in the mix as well, and then we go to the Swiss rider Kung as well, so they're all in here giving it a go and stirring things up as we enter into the last 20 kilometres.
It's an impressive chase this. You can see a lot of the teams have obviously represented themselves at the front. There's just no one team that's actually coming to the front and dictating things, so you can see there's some real enthusiasm within the squads here to get to the front, and there'll be attack after attack and squad after squad come through to try and chase him. You can see there Tom Scully's getting a bit frustrated at the front. He's one rider who will be really hoping that this break comes back.
H&J's Outdoor World Advantage Plus to the green colours going through there, and they've got Cam Kowalski would be their lead man for a sprint finish. We've seen him right up there in contention numerous times over the week already here as our lead two men. They're getting the call. They know they've got about a 30-second advantage here at the moment. It's just hovering, but they're not going to give this up. They want to take this stage.
Yeah, Josh Page here from the Barry Stewart team. They will be really giving their everything. They've turned right onto the main road. Here's the main peloton, the main right-hander from Mospin onto the main Lumsden Road, and these riders have not got far to go. This descent down around this corner, and you're virtually in the township of Lumsden. So these guys will be putting absolutely everything into trying to stay away.
So some 3,000 metres remaining for these riders. Here's another hit off the front of the main peloton here. 3 more riders deciding to try and get themselves there. It looks like the colours of Calder Stewart, and I think also we've got Team Space there in the green colours. They're trying to shut things down. They're about 10 seconds in front of that main peloton, and a further 10 forward to these two boys as they enter onto the edge here of Lumsden, which will involve a circuit into the big Longs finishing straight.
And Daniel Barry, he's probably not unfamiliar with these sort of situations. He's raced extensively overseas and in Europe, but it appears that these two are going to get caught.
This has been a very close finish in the past here. Unfortunately for these two guys, they've given it everything, but they're going to be swallowed up as once again they've timed it to perfection, the peloton, as we often see in the big races here. And now it's time for the big sprinters. It's time for the teams to get themselves onto the front and lead these guys through to potentially take out the victory here into Lumsden.
You can see the furiousness in the peloton here. The teams will be really trying to get their sprinters into the right position, because unless you're in the right position in the stage finish into Lumsden, it comes around very quickly. There's a couple of corners, a left and a right hand corner, and you can see here there's some real frustration coming on. Guys trying to get to the front.
The efforts are going on here, and they're picking up the pace all the time as we've ramped it up now to over 50 kilometres an hour here. The school kids are out in great vocal spirit here as we line ourselves up for the big long sprint here. It's the man from the United Kingdom, Matt Cronshaw, who's got the lead at the moment. He raises his hand in victory. He takes it out by half a wheel in the ends from Joe Chapman, and we go with Cam Kowalski, who will get himself secured for third place. But the man from the United Kingdom, the leading team there from Kiwi Velo. A mere 37 seconds covers the top 3 here in the tour this year, with James Oram securing the yellow jersey going into tomorrow's time trial. While on the Harcourt Sprint Ace, Tom Scully is firmly in the green jersey with 70 points versus 46 with Paul Odlin. The Jesco Hydraulics is Grayson Napier's all the way to Invercargill tomorrow. While the Henderson Construction under 23 remains on the shoulders of James Oram with a 3-minute advantage over Vesey and Hewitt. The Wensley's team classification is the Australian-based team Hugh & Salmon Genesis Wealth Advisors from H&J's Outdoor World Advantage Plus, only 7 seconds adrift.
Didn't really expect it, to be honest. We've been trying to control the race to keep James in yellow for the last 3 days, and I've done quite a bit of work on the front, so coming into the last 50 metres clear was quite a surprise, but pretty stoked. We pretty much played our cards perfectly, and there's high morale in the team, and we're kind of feeding off that.
Follow the 2013 SBS Bank Tour of Southland all week with full results, live roadside updates, photo and video galleries at tourofsouthland.com.